The golden halls of paradise stood eerily silent, emptied of all celestial warriors. Every angel and archangel had been sent to earth, every choir of holy fire unleashed, except for one. Zerah, heaven's fiercest blade, remained at Yahweh's side. Then it came, a sound unlike any other, a sharp, resonating crack that cut through the holy stillness like a blade through glass. The air in heaven grew heavy, the pure light dimming as shadows began to crawl across the floor, slithering up the golden walls like living things. The temperature dropped, and the warmth of Yahweh's realm seemed to retreat. Zerah's eyes narrowed. Her heartbeat quickened, not from fear, but from the anticipation of a battle she had long awaited. Slowly she lifted her gaze toward the source of the encroaching darkness. And then she saw him. Spawn stood there, cloaked in living shadow, the faint flicker of hellfire dancing in the depths of his eyes. His presence warped the air, making the very fabric of heaven shudder. The weight of him was oppressive, wrong, and yet unshakably powerful. Zerah's hand tightened on her blade until the metal groaned. Her voice was sharp as steel when she spoke. "It's you!" Spawn didn't flinch. He stepped forward, each stride echoing like a death knell in the empty halls. His gaze never left hers, his lips curling into a demonic smile. "You will die here and now," her voice rising like a war trumpet, "for what you did to me." The shadows around Spawn writhed and whispered, promising blood. And somewhere beyond the veil of light and dark, Yahweh watched in silence. Spawn's sadistic smile widened, his voice low and venomous as he stepped closer, the shadows around him pulsing like a living thing. "You forget where you came from," he said, each word laced with contempt. "And I don't have time for you. I've waited so long for this moment." Before Zerah could even draw her blade, Spawn vanished in a blur, only to reappear inches from her, his burning red eyes locked with hers. In that instant, the air erupted into a wave of oppressive heat. A sudden ignition roared to life around her. Zerah's immaculate, radiant armor began to glow, then blister, before splitting apart as hellfire erupted from within her. It wasn't the fire of the mortal world, it was a living, ravenous flame, black at its core, eating not just flesh but the very essence of her being. Her voice tore through the golden halls in a scream that shook the foundations of heaven. Her once pure soul began to unravel in the fire's grip. Spawn watched with cold satisfaction, tilting his head slightly as the smell of burning divinity filled the air. "This," he murmured, almost to himself, "is just the beginning." Zerah's eyes, wide with disbelief, began to dim as chains of shadow erupted from the ground, wrapping around her and dragging her downward. They coiled tighter, pulling her toward a yawning, obsidian fissure that had formed beneath her feet. From its depths, a chorus of guttural voices rose, welcoming her to damnation. With one last scream that echoed into eternity, her soul dragged and torn into the abyss below. Above it all, Yahweh stood still, his expression unreadable. His eyes followed Zerah's descent without lifting a hand to stop it. Yahweh stepped forward, each footfall echoing through the hollowed halls of heaven, like the tolling of a massive bell. "I don't know how this is possible." His voice was calm, but I must say, a faint, almost imperceptible smirk touched his lips. "I've been hoping this day would come." Spawn stood unmoving, his tattered cloak swaying in an unfelt wind, the green glow in his eyes locked on Yahweh. "We both were not permitted in our realms or earth," Yahweh continued, his tone shifting, the word permitted laced with disdain. "But now, I'm starting to see what you've done. This vessel carries holy bloodlines. That is how you've walked into my domain without being torn apart. Very clever, brother." The space between them felt heavy, like the air before a storm. "But clever or not," Yahweh said, his voice lowering, harder now, "I will make you release him, not as this mask you hide behind. No, I want to see you face to face." Spawn's lips curled into the faintest of smiles, but he said nothing yet. With a blur that mortal eyes could never track, Yahweh's hand shot forward, closing around Spawn's neck with a grip that could crush mountains. The force sent ripples of divine energy radiating through heaven's halls. Yet Spawn did not flinch, his gaze unbroken, his green glow unwavering. "Show yourself, Lucifer," Yahweh commanded, his voice shaking the very foundations of the realm. "In this form, you will not last very long." For a moment, there was only silence. Then, from within Spawn's body, a sound began, low, rumbling, and primal, like the growl of a predator that had been caged too long. "As you wish, brother." Spawn's body convulsed violently, the shadows around him growing thicker, darker, until they consumed his form entirely. With a violent eruption of hellfire and blackened light, the vessel was flung aside like a discarded shell. And then he stood there, Lucifer, in his true form. His wings, vast and terrible, stretched across the chamber, their edges dripping embers of shadow and flame. The sheer pressure of his presence made the light in heaven flicker, as if the realm itself feared him. The two brothers locked eyes, and in that silent exchange, eons of history and an unending competition for creation itself. The sibling rivalry that had festered for eons was no longer hidden in whispers or proxy wars, and if either of them unleashed their full strength, the universe itself might not survive the reckoning. As Yahweh and Lucifer clashed, their blows were cataclysmic, each strike detonating with the force of collapsing stars. The very air between them fractured like glass, and with every collision, the shockwaves rippled outward into the farthest reaches of the cosmos. Planets quaked, Earth was being ripped apart, stars dimmed, entire galaxies felt the aftershocks of the brothers' fury. The balance of the universe was unraveling. Far from the epicenter of their war, Spawn lay motionless, his body broken but not defeated. The ringing in his ears faded into a whisper, no, not one voice, but many. A chorus, layered and endless, spoke from within. "Wake up! We are Legion!" Spawn's eyes snapped open, glowing brighter than they ever had before. In that instant, he felt it, a surge of unimaginable energy rushing through every fiber of his being. These were the countless souls Lucifer had stolen over the millennia. Warriors, sinners, innocents, kings and martyrs, bound together, each one lending their will and essence to him. Now, fully awakened, they were his to command. Spawn rose to his feet, black and crimson energies coiling around him like living serpents. For the first time, he realized this was not just vengeance anymore. This was ascension. He was no longer merely a hellspawn. He was the vessel of a legion, an army within one man. Even Lucifer himself was no longer untouchable. Time itself hung still, every sound swallowed into an oppressive silence. Spawn's body refused to obey him, muscles locked, as though the very laws of existence had decided he no longer had permission to move. And then, like a ripple through glass, it happened again. That impossible presence returned. The man of miracles stepped from the void between moments, his boots touching ground that wasn't really there. He looked at Spawn with calm, unreadable eyes, the weight of eternity in his gaze. Spawn's voice strained through the invisible bonds holding him, his tone filled with both frustration and defiance. "If you're this powerful, you could end this right now. Stop them. You told me once I'd have to make a choice. I've made it." The man of miracles tilted his head ever so slightly, and then, without warning, his form began to shift. The features of a man dissolved like sand in the wind, giving way to a radiance so vast and alien it dwarfed even the power of Yahweh and Lucifer. What stood before Spawn was her, the mother of creation, the first spark, the womb of the multiverse, the being from which even the twin brothers had been born. Her presence was not blinding light, nor consuming darkness, but something older, deeper. Her voice was everywhere at once, within Spawn's ears, within his bones, and in the core of every soul bound to him. "Spawn, you will not be able to stop them. You might challenge one, perhaps even bring one to his knees. But both, they will unmake you, body and soul. Oh, what disappointments my two sons have become." Her words carried neither anger nor sadness, but something heavier, a cosmic weariness. It was the tone of a mother watching her children burn the house they were born in. Spawn felt the legion within him stir, their voices whispering questions and demands, but for the first time, even they seemed wary in her presence. The frozen battlefield around them became a vast, starless void, the remnants of heaven, earth, and hell drifting like ash in the air. Her gaze never left Spawn, yet he felt as though she was looking through him into every choice, every sin, every drop of blood he'd ever spilled. "My sons have squandered humanity with their petty games," she said, her voice resonating in the marrow of every soul bound to him. "They have treated mortals as pawns on a board they built, destroying worlds to prove themselves right, and yet," her tone softened, "barely. I still love them. I cannot kill them, even now. But Armageddon was always inevitable. You, however, are not bound by my mercy. I will empower you, until one end. Spawn, you will carry my power and do what you think is right." Spawn's eyes narrowed. "And why me? You've seen what I've done. I've torn apart angels, slaughtered demons, crushed anyone in my way. You have been through hell and back, literally. You have done malicious acts, yes, but you have also fought for what you believed mattered, even when the cost was your soul. You have no illusions left. You know what must be done, even if the doing is ugly." The legion inside Spawn screamed, not in fear but in anticipation, as raw, unfiltered creation energy poured into him, weaving itself into every molecule of his being. "Go, Al Simmons," she whispered. "End this. Not for me, not for them, for what is left." The frozen moment began to crack, time ready to resume. Lucifer's blade still mid-swing, Yahweh's hand still raised to strike. Spawn closed his eyes, the power of the Mother of Creation still coursing through him like a storm barely contained. Reality bent to his will, not in small ripples but in vast tectonic shifts across the fabric of existence. With a single thought, he carved open the layers of time and space, shaping something only he could control, a pocket universe. Inside this sealed reality, Yahweh and Lucifer were cast together, stripped of their armies, their worshippers, and their distractions. Here there was no escape. Only the two of them, forced to live out eternity in an endless cycle of battle, neither able to win, neither able to die. The sound of their war became the heartbeat of that world, a constant reminder to them both that their reign over mortals was done. Spawn turned his gaze back to what was left of the real universe. The ruined earth, the hollowed heavens, the shattered realms of hell, all of it was suffused with the scent of ash and grief. But he would not leave it that way. Summoning the full scope of his newfound creation power, Spawn reached into the endless void and pulled the dead back into life. Loved ones were reunited. Entire cities rose from rubble. The skies cleared. But this was not a blind restoration. He did not wipe away the memories of what had happened. Every human, angel, and demon who returned carried with them the truth of Yahweh and Lucifer's endless hunger for control, the truth of how gods and devils alike had played with the lives of mortals like toys. The sacred timeline Spawn created was no story of blind faith. It was a history unflinching in its honesty. In a quiet moment among the countless resurrections, Spawn found his wife, Wanda. She stood in the light of a new dawn, alive again, tears in her eyes as she looked at the horizon. Spawn did not reveal himself. He could have walked to her, held her, told her everything. But he didn't. Instead, he let her go. She deserved a life free from the weight of his war, a life where she could be happy without the shadow of who he had become. And so he vanished into the backdrop of the reborn world. They say that somewhere in the places between light and darkness, he still walks. Not as a savior, not as a ruler, but as a silent guardian, watching, waiting, ready to step from the shadows if the truth is ever threatened again. Share, like, comment, and subscribe for more content.